Hey, Fanboy Nation.
This is your pal Daffy Duck, and you're watching.
We're watching Fanboy.
A fanboy, etc.
Fanboy Nation.
Dot, I assume Tom.
I met these two people at the Newport Beach Film Festival through my friend Robert Rollins, who was more than giddy to talk about Doctor Who with them. And when he mentioned that they were the Doctor Who documentary, my initial reaction was like, that's great. I don't really like Doctor Who, but I love documentaries, so I'm torn. Yet it was a great pleasure, and they sold me on it and delivered a fantastic documentary. Doctor Who Am I? Matthew Jacobs and Vanessa Yuille. How are you today?
Doing well.
Very well, thanks.
I have to preface that I never liked Doctor Who. And I know your reactions were like, oh, dear God, here's somebody that's going to roast our documentary. So for 2 days, I followed you guys around like, no, trust me, I'll do you justice. My very first as a kid, Doctor Who was around, but I never really paid attention to it. And then during the resurgence of the guy in the leather coat, I don't remember his name. Sorry, I'm being honest.
Paul McGann or
Eccleston.
Eccleston,
No,
right.
that guy, yeah. Sorry, Mr. Eccleston. I'm sure you're a wonderful human being. I just didn't know which one you were. People started asking me, who's your doctor? And I was like, well, that's kind of invasive for medical questions. I said, well, it's Dr. Lee. Why? Do you need a reference? And then they got mad at me as if I was the lunatic that didn't understand. And then I had reviewed something that was Doctor Who, and it wouldn't fit in the headline, so I abbreviated it DR period. And like 20 people in the comments lost their minds on me until somebody else had to go back to the original series and go, no, they abbreviated it as Doctor Who in the title card. So it created this other rivalry. I was like, I tap out. So thank you for tolerating me with all of this. But it was a pleasure meeting the two of you, and congratulations on this documentary.
Well, thank you. Thank you very, very much. So,
Thanks, Robert.
So then from now on, do you spell it all out, doctor, or are you going to start just abbreviate, save on space?
I just pretty much go Doctor Who gives a shit and just keep walking on with my life. But
Doctor Who gives a shit. That's a good sequel.
I'm gonna get so much hate mail for this, but it's all right. Yeah. But Matt, you wrote The Eighth Doctor for an American audience.
That's correct. Yeah.
And apparently you are a blasphemer in the world of Doctor Who for making him not only half human, but having a romantic interest in his companion.
That's true. I mean, it's almost as bad as you abbreviating Doctor to DR. I mean, it was quite fundamental. I think a lot, fans want to pick up on stuff. They like stuff to be either the same or an extension of, and they felt it was going in a slightly different direction. So they reacted rather with a great deal of vitriol to that. But over the years, the romantic side of the Doctor has emerged, and certainly we were watching it last night. We were watching Power of the Doctor, which is good stuff, but very romantic. I mean, the relationship between Jodie Whittaker and Yaz, and do you know what I mean? They're now very romantic characters. And last night when we were watching it, they brought back my Doctor. They brought back Paul McGann briefly when she goes off and visits
she's like in a holding set.
Yeah.
Like in a regeneration waiting room.
Exactly, and she's got all the classic Doctors are there, all looking a little worse for the wear, but generally recognizable.
He looked great.
He looked great, yeah. I was very excited to see him. I think it's nice that he's now well and truly on the show.
I met Paul once, very nice guy.
He is, isn't he?
Yeah, and everybody I've met affiliated with the show is wonderful. It's just that it was never something I picked up on. Like Vanessa at one point in the documentary says that she grew up as a Trekkie, as a Star Trek fan. And that was something I was able to relate to a little more because of an older cousin who's a huge Trekkie and a couple of friends. But has it become almost to the point of being a zealot to, in experiencing some of this, where they're, like, for example, I went to a Star Trek convention and they wanted to play Star Trek trivia with a friend of mine. And they wanted to play easy and they picked whichever series it was, season, episode, and minute, and then told them, all right, describe what's going on. So has that?
Wow.
Yeah, Matt's face says it all. Yes, wow, it is.
Well, I think. Sorry, you say, Vanessa.
Well, I think there's certainly that element of it. There's 60 years worth. The 60th anniversary is next year. You have it there. You have grandfathers and kids who still watch the same show and have their own separate doctors. So people get very, they latch on to their first doctor and always kind of get into that. So that there is that element, but I think people can jump in at any point and enjoy the show because the show changes so much. So it's very exciting. Next year they're bringing back David Tennant, and they're going to have Ncuti Gatwa as the doctor, and the production company Bad Wolf is doing it all, and they've done some very successful things. So I think there's going to be a big resurgence, and you're going to get a lot of new Whovians, especially next year when the show kicks off again.
I think, yeah, I agree. I mean, it's exciting. It was announced this morning that Disney Plus are going to be carrying the Doctor Who shows around the world, and BBC will still carry it in the UK. But as far as America is concerned, it'll be all through Disney Plus. And they've changed the logo. There's all sorts of exciting things happening. And certainly Ncuti Gatwa is sort of treating it. There's a little thing of him talking about Doctor Who, introducing it as though nobody knows anything about this show. So I think that's the main exciting thing. You do have the fanatics, you do have the zealots, you do have the people who are worried about what kind of thread to use in their costume, who are busy knitting scarves and baking cakes and everything. But you also constantly have new fans who are arriving. So as a show, it's sort of, it stays alive, it regenerates itself. And that's great. That's certainly what we felt yesterday when we were watching it, didn't we, Vanessa? I felt it was like that feeling of like, this show is very much alive, which is great for a show that's almost 60 years old. Mind you, they only show one or two episodes a year. It's like sort of, that's how it got to be 60, I suppose.
Well, it's being released in the UK on Friday, October. What is Friday? I think it's the 20th.
Thursday, the 27th.
Thursday. Our documentary, you mean? Yeah.
Yes, your documentary, Doctor Who Am I? Is going to be released in the UK on the BBC. One of the BBCs, BBC, 1, 2, 3, 4, 9, whichever one.
No, it's not on. Okay, it's not on the BBC. I mean, the whole thing about Doctor Who Am I is it really exists outside of the BBC. It's a truly independent little documentary. We do use stuff from the show, but we use it under the sort of provisions of fair use, and we had some very good lawyers who sorted that all out, and because it's really about the fans and not about the show, it is able to stand alone. So it's been released by a company called Kaleidoscope Films, Kaleidoscope Film Distribution, and Kaleidoscope Home Entertainment. And then we can't announce it yet, but it does have a British sort of network or platform that are taking it up. But it's not a BBC production.
Well, that's good to know, and thank you for the correction.
That's okay. I'm sorry,
Vanessa. No. I don't feel stupid. I mean, it's true. If it's it's my ignorance that I should double check with you ahead of time. But Vanessa, you were essentially the sword in Matthew's back that got him to kind of come back into this Whovian world. What was the catalyst for you to sit there and just start poking at him and go, look, now's the time, now's the time, now's the time? Well,
actually, we've made a couple movies together. I worked with Matthew on 2 of his other feature films. And I honestly had no idea that he had written The Eighth Doctor. And that was a big surprise to me because he started getting invited to these conventions. And I just thought that was hilarious. I mean, Matthew kind of has a very funny version of telling this part. But essentially, we're just kind of ignorant in terms of like, we're just going to go. Yeah, we'll just shoot for a couple days and then we'll have a documentary or something will happen. And little did we know after the first convention we went to. I mean, I knew we needed to shoot a little bit more, but it was just, we didn't know this would take so long. It was just like, yeah, spirit of independent filmmaking. We'll just go out there and just shoot something, and then bam, I'll edit it together and we'll be done in a year or two. Didn't exactly happen that way. But yeah, it was, I had no idea that Matthew had written The Eighth Doctor, because he was getting invited to conventions for the 50th, and, you know, Matt was being invited to Florida. If you want to.
So it was fun. I mean, it really, when the 50th came along, nobody really knew where I was. They didn't even know I was in America. And they brought the Eighth Doctor back in order to kill him. So that was online. So suddenly people were reaching out to me via my website saying, what do you think of this? And then bit by bit, sure enough, I started getting invited to very strange little conventions in Jacksonville, Florida, with Dr. Puppet, and all of that stuff. And Vanessa was surprised. And so, yeah, so we both went, oh, there's a story here. But Vanessa, I think, focused more on the fact that it might be my story. I thought it just might be about these this community of fans, really, in the way in which fandom works. And then I think what extended the process was, in fact, the journey that is portrayed. You've seen the documentary. The journey that's portrayed in the documentary, which is my gradual coming around, as it were, until I realized that I'm just as much a fan as anybody else, and it's not a bad thing. And I actually come to kind of love this family. I still, at the end, I'm saying we're all a pretty screwed up bunch, but I'm learning that, you know, I kind of sort of, it's a journey that I think a lot of people take when they become absorbed by, or when they try to embrace communities that they're not quite sure about. You even go on this journey when you go to school, or you go to university, or wherever you go, you get absorbed into a sort of new community of some kind. And it enables you to reflect on yourself a bit more. So that's the universal aspect of the documentary, and that's what made it richer. And actually, I think it just in as much as it took 7 years for them to bring back the Doctor from the 7th Doctor to the 8th Doctor, it took us 7 years to go from having this idea to actually it being the perfect time for it to come out, because this year coming is the perfect time for this documentary, for the fandom to look at itself.
And it was quite hopeful, actually, you know, from the fans' perspective and the people that you've interviewed and your own, because your connection to Doctor Who goes beyond the 8th Doctor. Your father was on the series as Doc Holliday at one point.
That's correct.
And to come full circle from being a youth visiting the set to being a writer on the series to now be an invited guest, this is an interesting trifecta.
You're right, it's a trifecta. I had never thought about it like that, but it really is. It really is. And yes, the other day, the guy who made this document, Ed Stradling, who made a documentary called The 7-Year Hitch, reached out to me and he said, "Oh, I've got your first TV movie, Smart Money. I've got it on Betamax," and that totally disappeared. BBC lose stuff all the time. And I said, "Well, do you have something called Point?" It was called Point Counterpoint, and it was 2 years after 1966. It was 1968. I was just Anthony's son, and Rex Tucker, the director of Gunfighters, remembered me and reached out and said, "Well, can we use Matthew in this classic serial?" And he sent me the footage, and I haven't seen pictures of myself from when I was 11, and it's the spookiest. It is really the spookiest thing, isn't it, to sort of suddenly see footage of yourself from another era, from 1968.
I had a friend not too long ago send us our wrestling team photo when I still had hair. So yes, I am quite familiar with
it. Hair. Hair today, gone tomorrow. Sorry.
No,
that was my problem.
Vanessa, you captured as the director of this, and one of the producers, I'm sorry, you captured the essence of what's going on, the fan appreciation that essentially Matthew was ahead of his time, because people have now come around with rose-colored glasses, either in fondness to reintroduce them to the series or the venom that some of them still spew to this day, but yet have been kind about it. Like, I'm going to pick on Nicholas Briggs because he's in the movie. And he's like, well, the writer's right there. I was like, well, just say how you feel because, be honest.
He's being very British.
Yeah. Whereas I'm very American. I've told people, I was like, you're a nice person. Your stuff sucks, but you're a nice person.
They do actually say that to me. They say that almost, you seem like a nice enough person, he said, another fan. But you destroyed my childhood.
See, that's an atrocious thing to say, because how do you continue to nurture your childhood? Your childhood ended at some point.
Yeah, you got to get over it, really.
I mean, that Kevin Kittredge,
He's great.
he's sort of the one who roasts Matthew, but if you notice, there's a smile on his face. It was in good nature. I mean, it was. I was having a really hard time not laughing during that interview. Just like, seeing Matthew get so roasted. it was hilarious. But you held your own. You held your own.
Yeah, it was okay. It was all right.
When you go back and you revisit the TV movie that was made for an American audience, it wasn't made for a British one. Have American fans been more kind to it than British fans, or vice versa in the long run?
I think, I think the American pre-existing fans of Doctor Who were probably disappointed by its Americanness. They were used to the Doctor being a very British thing. We were making it for both countries, but yes, it was primarily an American production because they put the bulk of the money up. But I think in the long run, just Doctor Who fandom in general regards it as a bit of an oddity. They're still discussing it. If the Americans had taken it over, it would be this, or it would have been that. We were so lucky that we escaped that. There's a series in the Radio Times at the moment that is spawned by them doing stuff on the documentary, and they've been interviewing Philip Siegel, and Philip Siegel has been dropping all these little pearls that he's dropped many times before, but all these little pearls of wisdom about how initially the American financiers didn't want to have a TARDIS, didn't want it to be a phone box, they didn't want this, they didn't want that. So it was constantly this business of how much do we make it like the classic series and how much do we make it like something different. So the end result is a sort of balancing act between what, if you like, the Eighth Doctor is a culmination of all the Doctors prior, and I think that's quite clear. So it was going to be very American, but it was also going to be British. Yes.
But I will be honest with you, the concept of Doctor Who having amnesia, trying to figure out who he is a great plot point.
Yes, it's a thank you. I think it had been used very briefly. I'm not sure about this. I'm sure fans will shoot me down on this, but it may have been a John Pertwee. It may have been the Pertwee regeneration where they did it a little bit. But no, it seemed to me to be the obvious way of telling the story and introducing the character.
And also, the Doctor Who Am I is the pitch for the TV movie, but for the documentary, right away, Matthew came out with the name of our documentary before we even started filming it.
Yeah.
Doctor Who Am I? I was like, great, cool.
That's right. We had the title before anything else, didn't we?
Yes, our cups of coffee and the title. And it was, okay, great, Matthew's on board. It's like, okay, we'll do this.
All right, so that poses the question, since you're the director and producer behind it and Matthew's the feature, who are you?
Well, actually, we're co-directors.
I'm sorry. Thank you for the correction one more time. Blame IMDb because it doesn't say co-director. It just says director.
Oh.
Does it?
Yes.
All right. Oh. Well, we'll do that. Okay. Well, we're co-directors.
All right.
And then we're co-producers, and then I edited. So who am I? Well, I'm a director. I'm an editor. I'm a documentary filmmaker. And have gone on this journey with my friend, Matthew Jacobs, as he discovers a community in a fandom he is very hesitant about. So hopefully if people go watch it, they will laugh enjoy his ride, because it's funny, and then hopefully they'll be surprised and find something that they can identify with as well and be moved by his journey. And so there you have it. We're super indie film, and for me, who am I? Yes, filmmaker, and I got to make a film with my friend, and it's finally out in the world.
Oh, it's beautiful. And Matthew, who are you now?
Oh gosh, I'm just a 66-year-old. I'm still working. I mean, there's some of these coverage on it. This says I'm retired. I'm still working. I'm still churning out movies.
You're retired?
Yeah, there's a couple of British, because it comes out in Britain this week. There's been a lot of stuff about it.
Well, they don't even mention me. That's what they do. They just talk about you.
Yeah, they took yeah, it's just the way it goes. But it's like it's funny. It's So I'm basically living. I'm still making films. Obviously, we've done Doctor Who. I've got a couple more in the pipeline, and I'm trying to get a TV show off the ground. And I've got my two sons who have grown up now, and one of them's just got married. I'm enjoying life. You get to a point where you say, I might as well enjoy life than feel sad about it, or struggle with it. Let's see if I can look at life as the cup half full, as they say.
Oh, come on. Was
Sometimes
there a bad review that came out this morning?
No, there wasn't. No, there wasn't.
Usually the roles are reversed, and I'm the cup half empty person, and you're the cup half full.
No, I said it's good to look at life as the cup half full.
I know. I'm like low energy, Matt.
Yes. All right. Okay, it's fantastic. I'm enjoying life so much. I'm running around Los Feliz or Los Feliz or however, and I'm having a great time, drinking lots of coffee.
Yeah. Well, I commend you in leaving San Francisco, my hometown. So congratulations on that.
I loved San Francisco. Yeah, I really did. It's gone down. It's a weird place now, but obviously I was there for a long time.
Yeah. You say something in the documentary that is very un-American yet very British. And you said, as a filmmaker, I stopped waiting for permission and just decided to do it. And I was like, well, Americans have never asked for permission. We've always apologized afterwards, if we even bother to apologize.
That's why I like America.
Yeah. What took so long for you to catch up to us? You've been here for 30 years.
You're right. I should have caught up. That's really observant. I hadn't thought about it like that. What took me so long? It was the writer's strike. And it was, 2007. Suddenly the end of the TV movie. I was making most of my money writing TV movies. Suddenly my expenditure was way more than my income, like so many people. I was unemployed for a while, and then I got the opportunity to teach a little bit at UCLA, a little some at University of Texas at Austin, and I just really revitalized me enormously. And then I got the opportunity to do some acting for Bernard, and that revitalized me. And Bernard Rose, who I worked with, who did Candyman and did Paper House and things like that, he doesn't wait for permission. He's never waited for permission. So he just goes ahead with his own projects. So I was very inspired by him, and I started making films like that. So that's what happened. So then we made Your Good Friend, and we made Bar America, and then we made this. And we continue to make films with Bernard. Actually, both of us are involved in his latest effort, which is called Traveling Light, and is out at various AMC cinemas across the country at the moment.
Well, I am very thrilled that I got to meet the two of you at Newport Beach Film Festival.
It was fun.
Even though you guys were a little shocked upon Robert's introduction to you, and I was like, I'm not really a fan of this series, but I love documentaries, so I'm torn in my love for documentaries and my dislike of Doctor Who, but I'll definitely check it out. And you guys made a wonderful documentary that is absolutely heartfelt. It is a almost love letter to the fans, but it's also Matthew finding acceptance in a community that he felt for the longest time, nearly 26 years, that almost rejected him completely and written him off.
It's true. That sums it up very well.
I'm glad you enjoyed it, even
I
though you aren't a Doctor Who fan,
Thank
because
you.
that's kind of what our hope is. Well, people to realize you don't need to really know anything about Doctor Who.
Yeah.
So let's say I finally sit there and go, all right, let's give this a fair shot. Because I had an ex-girlfriend that introduced me to Matt Smith, and I just kept looking at her going, really? This? Nothing against you, Matt. I'm sure you're a wonderful guy, but like your version of the show didn't really speak to me, which is a polite way of saying I didn't like it. So I just kept looking. I was like, really? I'm like, okay. I mean, I watched a couple episodes with her. You know, I was like, listen, she went with me to a mixed martial arts fight. I'll watch Doctor Who with her. You know, where would be the jumping off point now? Because we have 60 plus years of, you know, from development to the launch of the series to the break to the TV movie to the resurgence of it to now kind of a lull and now again another resurgence. Where does someone start? And how do you also tell people that are that obsessed that get mad at you because you started at a different point, go, look, I just want to enjoy the show?
I personally think starting at 2005 with Eccleston
Yeah.
is always a
I
great
think
starting point. I think he's great and can pull you in, and then you have plenty to watch. Or I think the new season next year, with
Yeah.
starting with Tennant and Ncuti, is going to be. I'm very excited for it because they also brought back Russell T Davies, who was the writer in the 2005 series. So either one of those, start next year or start at 2005, and if you can get a hold of the TV movie, I think it's really great. I hope they bring it. I hope they figure it out and can make it more available.
Yeah, because it's partially owned by all the supporting characters, which were written specially for the TV movie, are owned by Universal, it seems. So, but yeah, I totally agree with you, Vanessa. I mean, I actually think if you haven't done it before, then ride with the show. Come and see wait until, maybe watch the one that's out at the moment so you get a vague idea. It's not a bad primer for you to see the history of all the different doctors, the power of the doctor. It's not bad. It's a little complex. It feels, it's kind of hard to follow, but you get a feel of the immense variety there. But I would start with what they're going to come in with in 23 next year, because and I'd wait for that and maybe go back and take a look at the Eccleston season, which is also Russell T Davies, who's the same showrunner who's coming on board in 23. So yeah, Vanessa's absolutely right. Probably just go back to the Russell T Davies years, see if it grabs your interest. You won't have to give up your life to watch, hundreds of episodes. You can get a bit of it and then pick up with Ncuti Gatwa next year. And for some people, it just grabs them. They realize, they go, oh, I love this doctor, whoever it is, Eccleston, Tennant, and they suddenly want to consume it all. And that's exciting too. And then they go and do it all again. They get really stuck into it.
Or then they go back to the classic Who.
That's right. They'll watch the, yeah. And the TV movie, if you can watch it, isn't bad. It's very 90s. It's very camp. It's sort of done like a sort of fast-paced 40s, almost rom-com, if you like, with lots of silly stuff and fun stuff. I'm very fond of it, and it's taken on a little life of its own. So that's not a bad one to start with. But really, whoever you start with and you fall in love with, that person kind of becomes your doctor. So it would be really nice for a whole new generation to have Ncuti as their doctor.
Wonderful. Listen, where can we find you guys on social media if we want to connect with you? And let's plug when it comes to the UK one more time.
Well, on Twitter, we're at Doc Who Am I. Same with Instagram at Doc Who Am I, and then Facebook, I think you just type in drwhoami.com, or it's doctor, spell out Doctor Who Am I, and we're there.
And then it gets released on the 27th for a couple of So you've got special screenings across the country in the UK. So all UK fans who might be looking at this, look at your local listings. You'll find it's on at View Cinemas and different places. Make a celebration of it. Go out and watch the movie with other fans. They're going to have a good time. And then next month, it comes out in the UK on Region 2 Blu-ray and DVDs, and they're actually selling like hotcakes on pre-sales. We've been up in the top 10 for a couple of months now. You know, so people are eager to see it, and then we don't know who our American distributors going to be. There are various people who are interested. As soon as we find out, we'll update everybody. And we're doing a couple of Doctor Who conventions in November. We're doing Long Island Who, and we're doing Chicago TARDIS. Then it looks like we're on a couple of festivals. A couple more festivals.
Oh yeah, people in Boston. Can we say that?
Oh yeah, I'm not sure we can announce
Okay,
that
never
yet.
mind. So cut that out.
It's not politic to announce before they announce. Do you know what I mean? They've told us, now you know.
Yeah, so just delete that.
Well, stick around for a couple of minutes because I have a story that I want to share with you that is not appropriate for a general audience, but I'm sure you'll get a kick out of it. Again, thank you so much for today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So much.